Hi everyone, and let's actually start building the database connection. Okay, so we'll start with this MongoDB setup. Okay, so yesterday we created actually all of these things, like we set it up our Express app and we implemented some of these packages which are from the security perspective. Okay, and then we also started our HTTP server. So today the first thing that we are going to focus on is building our database. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do here is to actually create a MongoDB account. Okay, if you haven't done that already, you can just go and simply create an account using your email. Okay, and after you have done that, you will be able to see a create database button on this screen. Okay, you will be prompted to create a database. Okay, so here you can find this create button, or it will be a green button at the center of this screen. Okay, after you log in, so we just need to click on it. Okay, then we are going to deploy a new cluster. So here we are going to actually start a new shared cluster because that is free. Okay, and for a cloud provider I'm just going to keep it to AWS for now, and the reason is just going to be Mumbai AP South one for me because it's closest to my place. Okay, you can choose whatever place lies close to you. Okay, and you can also see like these are free ones. Okay, and if you see this currency icon, okay, then this is a paid reason. Okay, you cannot create any free cluster there. So after that you just need to actually see these other things that are already done for you. Okay, so we are just going to keep these settings. We'll be creating this cluster. Okay, we'll have 512 megabytes of storage. Okay, this will be a shared cluster. There will be no backup. Okay, and if you want to enable termination protection, you can just enable it, and you can actually modify the name of your cluster. Okay, I'm just going to keep it to this cluster one. Now the last thing that you need to do here is to just click on this create cluster button. Hi Sanyam, hi everyone. So I hope you guys are following along. Okay, so as you can see, it is saying that I have one project already created. Okay, and I have already launched one free cluster. Okay, as you can see here, cluster 0, so only one free cluster is allowed per account. Okay, so that is why I'm getting that error message, but you can create one if you haven't already. Okay, so now after a certain time, okay, you will be able to see this connect button. Okay, and if you click on it, you will be prompted with these options. We have to go with this second option, connect your application. Okay, because we are going to connect it through an API. So you just need to select these options if they are not already selected for you. Okay, and after that we just need this connection string. Okay, and there is also one more step that I want to show you. Okay, like how this username and password, how we'll get these. So it is going to be created in this process of cluster creation. Okay, so I'm just going to terminate this cluster. Okay, now I can create another free cluster so that I can show you how we are going to create those username and password. Okay, again same settings. Okay, create cluster, let the free cluster terminate. Okay, so it is going to take some time, so I'll go back. Okay, and do some setup in our code base till then. Okay, so here actually we need to handle unhandled rejection and uncaught exception. Okay, these are the error types. Okay, you can say like whenever there is an exception in our application, then it is going to crash if we are not going to handle it gracefully. So for that, what we are going to do, inside server.js file, we are going to write this at the top, like process.on. Okay, this is kind of an event listener. Okay, so here you can actually select one of these three. So first of all, we are implementing this uncaught exception. Okay, so whenever there is an uncaught exception in our server, okay, then we are going to handle it gracefully. Okay, so what we are going to do, we will simply log the error to the console. Okay, and to shut down the server, what we'll do, we'll just call process.exit1. so whenever we exit any process with this code 1, then that means we have shut it down our container or our server, okay, because of an application failure. And to restart it, we'll be using a process manager, okay, pm2, when we'll be hosting it on a virtual machine. Okay, so I hope this is very clear. We can, like, we have logged the error and we have also gracefully shut it down our server. Similar to this, we have another thing which is known as unhandled rejection. Okay, so we are actually going to implement that as well. So we'll just write process.on. okay, then we can again write here unhandled rejection, then we'll get the error in the callback, okay, as an argument. Then again I'm going to do the same thing. We'll be console logging the error, okay, then we'll call this thing server.close. okay, here you can see we have actually exited the process, but when there is an unhandled rejection, we are going to close our server. Okay, so we'll be calling this server.close, and to this we can just pass a callback. Okay, so after our server is closed, we'll be again exiting this node process with this code 1. So this is going to handle these two edge cases, uncaught exception and unhandled rejection, okay, if the errors are not handled inside our application. Now let's see if this cluster is deleted. Yeah, now we can actually go on to build a new database. Okay, so here you can see we are now getting these three options. We are going to go for this free shared cluster again. Okay, then after this, again same settings, then I'll just click on this create cluster button, and now you can see we are prompted for this security quick start. Okay, when we go on to create our cluster, so here we can choose any username which will be used to actually establish the connection between our database and API. Okay, so you have to actually create it here. So I already have created two username and password previously. Okay, I'm just going to create another one. So I'll say API-user. Okay, and I'm just going to auto generate this password, but make sure you copy it, okay, because we are going to need it again. Then I just added it to this list of users. Okay, then I'll be connecting to this database from my local environment. Okay, so I have this selected by default, and in the list of IP addresses, okay, this is the allow list. You can actually add your current IP address, okay, or you can add this 000, which will allow connection from anywhere. So I'll recommend that you add this one, okay, because this is just a free cluster and we are not paying for it. Okay, so for this project it is going to be convenient, okay, if you keep it to anywhere, like any computer can connect to this application, or sorry, database. And then after this you can just click on this finish and close. Okay, then go to databases. Now you can see our cluster is actually deployed. Okay, now we can just click on this connect button, then connect our application. Before that, I'm going to go inside my server. Okay, then here I'll be writing db and db password. Okay, then whatever I have just copied, I'll paste it here, and similarly we will be pasting a db connection string. Okay, so I'll call it db URI. Okay, then we can get this URI. Okay, I'm going to again paste it here. Now you can see we have to replace this username and password. So username is going to be API user that I just created. Okay, API user, and the password is going to be this one, but we are not going to replace it directly here. Okay, I'm just going to go through the usual practice that we do while building applications. So here I will say username, this is just a placeholder, we will be replacing it shortly, and in the place of password I'll write this one. Okay, rest of the string has to remain the same. Now what we are going to do, we'll go inside our server.js, and now we want to access an environment variable inside this file. Okay, so for that purpose we are going to actually make use of a package here which is called .env. Okay, So we need to install it using npm I. Okay, so I'll be opening up my terminal, then you can just write here npm I .env. Okay, now after that package is installed, I'll be just calling it here like this. Okay, .env and then config. Then inside here we can pass these options. Okay, so here we'll be passing the path to our env file. Okay, and that is actually present on the same level, so I can just write this config.env. I hope this is very clear. Okay, and we can actually require this .env package here. Like this. Now after this we just need to create a DB connection URI. Okay, so after this HTTP server is created, at this point I'm just going to write DB is equal to, okay, we'll be creating the URI first of all. So I'll be again using the environment variable that we just created, so we have to use this process.env. okay, then after that you can see in our config.env file we have written this DB URI. Okay, so I'll be accessing that. Okay, now since that is a string, so I can call this replace method on it. Okay, and then here what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say I need to replace this password along with this angle brackets with the string, okay, which is stored inside again in our env file. Okay, process.env dot db password, like this. I'm just going to fill up my username here, which will be api-user. Okay, now after we have done this, or you can just directly use your password here. This is just a usual practice to replace actually our password inside this, because we are not going to keep our password inside our project environment file. Okay, this will be stored on our virtual machine. Okay, that is why we have to go through this replace method. Now the next thing that we need to do here is to actually use this MongoDB ORM. We are going to use Mongoose here, so let's actually first install that. So I'll write npm I mongoose. Okay, we are not going to directly interact with MongoDB, we'll be using an ORM here which is called Mongoose. Okay, so that is going to actually establish the connection to our database and will do the operations for us. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, you can always post it in the live chat or in the comments. Okay, and also please make sure to like this video. Okay, now after we have done this, I'm just going to require the Mongoose package here. So let's write Mongoose require Mongoose. Okay, now after we have required this Mongoose package, we can actually call this connect method on it. Okay, so we just need to pass the DB connection URI. Okay, and along with that we can also pass some options here. So we are going to actually pass 4 options here. The first one is going to be use new URL parser. And why we are actually writing this here, let me explain it to you. First of all, its value is going to be true. So what is actually happening here, there is an underlying MongoDB driver, okay, which has deprecated the current URL parser. Okay, so there was a major change. Okay, so that is why MongoDB or the Mongoose package has provided us with this flag use new URL parser, so that we can fall back to the old URL parser. Okay, if there is a bug in the new one, so we are just going to use the old URL parser. Then we'll also pass this option use create index, and we'll set its value to true. Okay, and again previously what was the case, MongoDB used an ensure index function which was used to call, okay, in order to ensure that indexes exist, and if they didn't, then a new one was created. Okay, So this was also deprecated in the favor of the create index method. So that is why we have to pass this use create index, okay, in order to ensure that we are using the new function that has been introduced. Similarly, there are two other options that we need to pass here, and that is use find and modify. Okay, we are going to set its value to false, and that is because this was a previous method that used to exist in MongoDB, but now we are going to use the new methods, okay, to in order to perform operations like find and update, find one and update, okay, and or find by id and update. So all those methods are going to be used in place of this find and modify. And similarly, there is a use unified topology. This is the last option that we are going to pass here, okay, and we are going to set its value to true, and make sure you don't make any spelling mistake here, okay, otherwise this is going to throw an error and you won't be able to connect to your database. And what is the purpose of this last option? It is basically used to ensure that we are using the new MongoDB engine, okay. So when we specify this option, then we are specifying that we want to use the MongoDB's new driver connection management engine. That's it, right? So this is going to actually establish the connection with our database, okay. And after this is done, what we can actually do, we can just chain this then method here, okay, so that we can listen to like whether the connection was successful or not. So we are just going to pass this callback here, okay, and when this connection is successful, we'll be just logging this string to the console that db connection successful, db connection is successful, right? So that's so that we will be able to know if the connection was established or there was some error, okay. And if there is some error, you can just gracefully handle that, okay, by using this .then.catch method, okay. So we can just again pass a callback here, and we'll be getting error as an argument to this callback. So you can always log that to the console and gracefully shut down your server, okay, if the connection fails, okay. So now we have done this uncaught exception and unhandled rejection, okay. We have handled these gracefully, and we have also established connection to our database, okay. So now we are ready to actually create schemas in our server. So for that, I'm just going to create a new folder here that will be called models. By model, I mean like we'll be defining the structure of the information that will be stored in our database. Like let me explain it to you through an example. So for each resource that we will be storing in our database, there will be a single model, okay. So for example, like we are going to store the user's information in our database. So for that, there will be some structure, like the user is going to have a first name, okay, a last name, an email, all those things, okay. So for that, we are going to define something which is known as schema, okay. So for that, again we are going to need this Mongoose package. So I'm just going to require it at the top, Mongoose require Mongoose, okay, like this. Then we have to create a schema. So I'm just going to write const user schema is equal to, then to create a schema we have to call this method which is called schema on this Mongoose library, okay. So we need to create a new schema like this. Then whatever properties we define inside this bracket, okay, that will be some property inside the user, okay. Like if we want to have a first name property in our users, then we have to define it like this, okay. Then we also need to define this type property, okay. So here the type is simply going to be string, okay. And there are lots of options that we can pass here, but just to start, I don't want to complicate it, so I'll be just introducing you to this required validation, okay. So we can just mark any field in our schema, okay, or you can say blueprint, to be required by just using this option along with this type. Okay, we just need to specify required, and if it is required then you can pass true here, otherwise it's false by default. And in case the user doesn't passes the first name, then we want to throw an error, and you can actually customize the message that will be sent to the user by just writing the message here. So we are going to say first name is required. Okay, this is very simple. So similarly, let's add one other property here, that will be the user's last name. Okay, and it is going to be very similar, just it is again going to be a string. Okay, then this is also going to be the required property. Now the next property that we want to have in our users database is avatar. Okay, that means there you can say profile picture, okay, or display picture. So this is again going to be a string, but it's not going to be required. Okay, if you don't want to keep any profile picture, then that's fine. Okay, now after this we can actually define some other properties here. So the first one is going to be very basic one, that will be email, and here I am going to actually explain how we can set validation on this one. So as you already know, email is again going to be a simple string. Okay, let's also keep it a required, like make it a required property here. So I'm just going to write here, let's also customize this message, last name is required. For the email, we are just going to say email is required. Okay, now there is a certain, we have to set up a validator here, like there has to be a certain format of each and every email, like let's say user@example.com. okay, so there is a specific format for any email. So for that we can use this validate function, okay, or this validate property actually that we get to define here. In this we can define this validator, okay, and it has to be a function. Okay, this will be run in order to ensure that whatever we are passing here, okay, as a string, that will be passing this validation or not, to ensure that this function will be run. Okay, and this function has to return a boolean value, that means true or false. So for that we are going to use regular expression here. Okay, and we just want to create an anonymous function here. I'm not going to give it any name because we are just creating it and directly consuming it, that's it. And as the parameter will be getting the user's email. Okay, whatever this property is, we get that inside this validator's proper params. Okay, now here we are going to just return true or false. So for the first thing that we are going to make sure is that email is a string. Okay, so we'll be converting that if that's not the case. Okay, then we are going to convert it to lowercase. Okay, so we'll be calling this method to lowercase, okay, on this string. Then after that we'll be calling this match. Okay, in here we can actually pass a regular expression, and to be very honest, I am not going to write any regular expression by myself. I just search for it on Stack Overflow. Okay, because writing regular expression is really a complex task. Okay, so I got this string, okay, this regular expression from Stack Overflow. You can also find it, okay, by just searching for it. So this is actually going to match if the email format is satisfying the format that is required for each and every email. Like there has to be @ symbol, there has to be some domain name associated, okay, and all those things, like what characters are allowed in it, all those things. Now if this validation fails, let's say, then we have to again show a message to the user. So to do that we can use this, we can directly return a message or specify a message like this, email is invalid. Okay, but we want to take it to the next step by telling the user what email they passed and that is invalid. So in order to do that we can actually pass a callback here. Okay, and whatever the string we return from this callback, that will be actually the message. So here we can use this props, okay, to customize the error message. So here we'll be saying Okay, we will be writing this template string. In here we will be using this props.value. So this props.value is actually going to be the email that the user passed. We'll be saying email, and whatever the email was given to us is invalid. Okay, this is a much more like clear message to the user. Okay, now I hope you got this. Okay, and if this is something you don't understand right now, then you will be able to get it, okay, with time. So you have to just practice it, okay, and read more about it. You can learn more about it through many blogs that are available on the internet, or you can also go through the documentation of Mongoose, like how we can define validation for fields. Okay, what are the possible scenarios. Now the next property that we are going to define here is the password. Okay, this is just going to be very simple. We'll be storing the password as a string. Okay, and we are also going to build the reset password functionality. Okay, so for that we'll be storing this another property here that will be password changed at. So this will be used to make sure, like, whenever a user changes its password, and if the user is logged into multiple devices at the same time, then we log the user out, okay, from all those devices. So here we'll be again going to store whatever, like it will be stored as a date. Okay, date is a type in MongoDB. Okay, you can actually learn more about the different data types that are available to us inside MongoDB on its documentation. I'll just make sure to post it links in the Discord server and also in the description box. Okay, so make sure to check that. And after that we'll be actually storing this another property that is known as password reset token. So this will be a unique string, okay, which will be basically used when a user wants to reset its password. So I'll explain in more detail like what its purpose is going to be, okay, how we are going to create it shortly. After that we are also going to actually set a timer here, or basically store a interval when the link for the password reset expires. Okay, so whenever we send a mail to the user, okay, and if a user wants to reset their password, like you must have done it earlier, and this application said like you have 10 minutes, after that this link will expire. So for that we are also going to actually build that functionality here, so you'll get to know how we can do that. For that we need to store this property password reset expires. So we'll be storing a date or a timestamp, okay, here, and these last two properties just, okay, created at. So we'll be storing the timestamp when the user was first created in our database and when the user updated itself. Okay, like whenever a user updates its name or about or its avatar, okay, then we'll be just updating the timestamp here. So its type is again going to be date, and similarly for this created at. Now I'm just going to format this document, okay, and save it. So we have completed the first step of creating any model inside Mongoose. Okay, so the next step is to actually create the model using this schema. Okay, this is just a schema. This is not useful for us. Like when I want to actually find a user from our database or update it, okay, or create a new user, then we are not going to make use of this user schema directly. We have to create something which is known as model. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So when I'm creating any model, I'll make sure to keep its name in this syntax. Okay, like the first letter is always going to be uppercase. So here now I'm just going to use this method which is available on this Mongoose library, which is known as model. Okay, here we just need to pass the name of the model. Okay, this name will be used in our database. Okay, I'll show it to you graphically, like using the GUI from the MongoDB, which is Compass. Okay, we'll be installing that shortly after we create any user in our database. Then as the second argument inside this model, we have to pass the schema that we just created. Okay, now this user that we get here, this is the model that is useful for us. Okay, like we'll be calling find, okay, update, delete, all those methods on this model. So in order to use this in other files, we have to export it from this one. Okay, so I'm just going to write here module.exports and then user. So I hope this is clear to you. Okay, if you have any questions, then just make sure to post that in the live chat. Okay, or you can also ask your questions in the comment, and also please make sure to like this video. Okay, that is really motivating for me. Now after this, we have to actually start building the controllers. Okay, so what is controllers? Controllers are basically going to carry all the core functionality in our app. Okay, like the business logic. So first of all, let's start with the authentication. Okay, so for that I'm creating this new file called auth.js. Okay, so here let's actually get this package which is called JSON web token. Okay, because we will be building this functionality where we have to send the user a token whenever a user logs into our application. Okay, then we will be sending a JWT token to them. Okay, so for that purpose we are going to need this package which is called JSON web token. Okay, let me also show it to you on npm.js. So you can just go ahead and search for JSON web token. Okay, and you can see it is the implementation of JWT. Okay, for the JavaScript. So now I think this is clear to you. Okay, so we'll be just using it here. So let's require it inside this file. So I'll be writing JWT is equals to require JSON web token. Okay, like this. And now after this we just need to get our model here. Okay, because we'll be performing all those CRUD operations on this model. Okay, and by CRUD I mean create, read, update and delete. These are the basic 4 operations that we perform on any collection or any document that will be stored in our database, right? So again, let's just import it from the models folder. Okay, we just created it few seconds ago. And after this, here we are going to create few functions and then export them. So the first one is going to be login. Okay, and since we are going to perform asynchronous operation here, okay, like reading data from the database, updating, all these actions are going to take some time. Okay, these are not going to be instantaneous. So for that purpose we'll be using the await keyword inside these functions. So we have to make use of this async keyword. Okay, now as an argument inside each controller we'll be getting these 3 functions. Okay, you can say like next is a function, the third argument, but this request and response, okay, these are going to like contain all of the properties that are sent to us and this response. And on this response we can actually set up like body, the header, okay, cookies, all those things. Now we have to start building the functionality here. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are first going to get the email and password that will be given to us by the user. Okay, and we'll actually get it in the request body. Okay, so we can extract it from the request body because the raw body will already be parsed by this body parser that we actually used yesterday. Okay, so the raw body will be passed into JSON and we can easily like destructure it here. Okay, now after that the first check that we are going to place here is for the email and password. Like we'll check if both the fields email and password are provided by the user or not. If it's not provided by the user, then we are just going to throw an error, and to respond to the user or to finish an API call, okay, like sending the response back to any request, we'll have to call this response. Okay, then we can set any status code on it by calling just this status method, and on this we can send any data to the user by calling this JSON method. Okay, and then we can pass any JSON data here that we want to send back to the user as a response. So here we'll be just writing this status. We'll say it's an error. Okay, and as a message we will say that both email and password are required. Okay, so this is very clear what we are doing here. We are just checking if the user has given us both the required fields for logging in, email and password. If that's not the case, then we are throwing an error to the user. Okay, that's it. Now after this, what we can do, we can, if the user has provided us with its email and password, then we are just going to find the user from our database, and to do that we are going to make use of this user model. Okay, we can actually call many methods that are available on it. If you want to know more about it, you can just go to Mongoose. Okay, let's open up the Mongoose documentation. Okay, now here you can go to read the docs. Okay, and if you search for find, okay, then you will be able to see many methods that are actually present inside this Mongoose. Okay, so here you can see we have this find method. Okay, and we can pass these options, okay, or this filtering criteria. Okay, and that will give us back all the results that match in our DB. So we'll just call find one. Okay, this is just going to give us a single document. Okay, then we'll check if the email, okay, that we just defined here inside the user schema, if any of the email matches with the email that is provided by the user. Okay, then we are going to get that user as a result in this user variable. Okay, now after we have done that, okay, I also want to like explicitly write here select. Okay, this is going to make sure that if we are fetching the user document from our database, then we include this field password with it. Okay, because we are going to need that inside this controller. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to place another condition here. Okay, let me also check if there are any questions. Okay, there are no questions, so let's continue. So I'm just going to write here if not user, that means we search for the user, but if this is null, that means no user was found with the given email, then what we are going to do, we are just going to again send a error message to the user. Okay, so we'll send a response with status code of 400, and we'll also send some JSON data back to the user. We'll set this status property to error. Okay, and we'll send a message here. We'll say email or password is incorrect. Okay, why I'm writing this message, because I'm just going to include one other condition here. Okay, for this case, like we have checked only user, if the user is existing or not, so we can say email is incorrect. Okay, but we can also check one more thing here, and that is like we can check if actually, for that we have to create a method on this user schema. Okay, so we'll be doing that soon, so let's just keep it to this email is incorrect. After that, we are also going to actually check if the user has provided us the correct password or not. Okay, so for that, let's go back to this user schema. Okay, then I'll be creating a method on this schema. So methods are basically functions, okay, which can access properties from this schema. Okay, so actually I'm going to first of all show it to you inside this Mongoose documentation. You can search for methods here. Okay, so if you search for it, and like if you click on this schema instance methods, then you will be able to see like we created this schema, and on that schema we can use this syntax to define some methods. Okay, which can actually access properties, like we are accessing type property. Okay, from this schema here, as you can see, we have defined this type property which is of type string, and then we are just accessing it here directly. Okay, so we are just going to do the same thing. So for that, we have navigated inside this user schema. Now what I'm going to do here, I will say user schema. Okay, then we have to call this method, which is simply methods. Okay, then we can define the name of the method here. I'll just name it correct password. Okay, so what this method is going to do, it will tell us whether it will compare the password. So the first password is going to be the one which is stored in our database, and the second one will be the user supplied. Okay, so we will be taking two props here. Okay, the first one is going to be named candidate password. Candidate password means the one which is supplied by the user to us in the API call, and the second one will be user password. Okay, user password will be the one that we have stored in our database. Now we just going to compare these two. Okay, and one more thing, we can't compare these directly, and the reason for that is because, like, if you keep your password to, let's say, just an example, 12345, so that is the candidate password here. Okay, so your password that you will be typing in the form that we have created on Frontend will be 12345, but the user password is not going to be stored like this, because this is not a safe method. Okay, this is not the usual practice. We are going to actually hash this password using a package called bcrypt. Okay, so we'll have to decrypt that password and then compare it. Okay, so your password will be actually stored as a random string. Okay, which is like no one can tell that this string is going to convert into this after we decrypt it. Okay, so that is why we can't directly compare these two passwords, so we have to make use of this bcrypt package here. Okay, so let's actually first get it. So I'll be writing npm I, okay, and then just bcrypt.js. You can write the same command, okay, in your terminal. And after we have installed this package, let's actually require it at the top. So I'll write const bcrypt is equal to require, okay, then the name of this package bcrypt.js. Okay, let's move on to this methods again. Okay, bcrypt. So bcrypt dot, then you can see we have many methods on it. We'll be using this encode and decode, okay, and generate salt. But before that, right now we just need this compare method. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are just going to pass the two passwords here. Okay, so the first one is going to be the candidate supplied password. Okay, that means the password given by the user, and the second one is going to be the user password from our database. Now we have created this correct password method, so we can use it inside our controller. Okay, so here I'm going to write this or condition here. Okay, and also keep this in mind that this method is actually going to take some time, because this password has to be decrypted and then it will be compared. Okay, and decryption is going to take some time. This is not going to be instantaneous again. Okay, so that is why we have to use again await keyword here. I hope that is clear to you. So we'll be writing await, okay, then this user, okay, and we can access the correct password method that we just created, okay, on this schema, and then we can pass the user supplied password, okay, the password given by the user to us. This is the password, and the one that we have in our database, that will be user dot password. And I want to again repeat it here. This user is the one that we fetched from the database, and this is starting from the capital U is the model. Okay, so you make sure you don't mistype here. Okay, like you have to be precisely correct. Okay, otherwise I'm just going to rename it to user doc. Okay, just to eliminate the confusion here. So let me write it like this. Okay, I hope this is clear now. So what we are going to do here basically is we are comparing whether the password is correct or not. Okay, and if the password is not correct, then this is going to turn true. Okay, I have added this not operator here, so we can now actually update our message here. We are checking first of all if the user was found or not. In case the user was not found, then that means the email given to us was not correct. Okay, and after that we are checking if the password is correct or not. Okay, and if that is the case, like password is not correct, then we will be sending this message password is incorrect. Okay, So this is actually pretty simple till now. Okay, I have explained, okay, everything that I can tell here. So the next step that remains after this is we have confirmed that the user exists in our database and the password is also correct. So after that, we are just going to sign the JWT token on our server and we will be sending it to the user back in the response. In this case, since the user is correct, okay, and the user has successfully logged in because it has provided us its correct username and password, so that is why we are going to send this 200 response. That means okay, everything is fine, okay, the API call was successful. So here we will be passing this JSON data, we'll be setting the status to success in this case. Okay, we'll also add a message, okay, which is basically displayed in the like the pop-up when you get, okay, like if you have signed in on any service, okay, new service, then you might have seen like sign in successful or registration successful, okay, those types of pop-ups, they are basically utilizing the message sent by the server. Okay, so here we can just write this message for the user logged in successfully. Okay, it's actually a good practice to send these message from the backend. We can also hard code it, okay, based on the event in our front end. Okay, now the only thing that remains here is to actually create this sign token function, because we haven't created anything which is going to create any JWT token for us. So let's actually define this sign token method or this function basically. Let me correct that. Okay, and I just realized I have to correct this spelling mistake here. Okay, there was a error over there. So here we can create this sign token function. Okay, let's just create an arrow function simply. Okay, so what we will be getting here is the user ID. Okay, each document in MongoDB is basically going to have its own unique ID. Okay, we will be passing that as an argument to this sign token function. Okay, and then what we are going to do, we'll be calling this JWT, okay, like using this, and then we can call this sign method available on it. Okay, and then we can pass all those properties that we want to contain inside the JWT token. Let me actually show it to you on the JWT website. So if you search for jwt.io, okay, then you can find this website. Okay, and here you can see this is a JWT token which is in the encoded format, and each JWT token basically has three parts. This red one is called the header, which basically specifies what algorithm, okay, was used to actually has this token. Okay, and there is a payload. Okay, this purple color section is denoting payload. These are the properties that is contained inside this token. As you can see, when this string is decoded, it is giving us these properties: sub, this number, the name, okay, and the IAT. IAT is basically the expiry time, okay, that is set, and this is how we can verify the signature. Okay, this is the signature which is present in the JWT token. We are going to set it. Okay, so let's actually move here again. Okay, so we are providing this payload. Okay, we are just setting up the user ID property here. Since we are using this syntax, you must already know the same key and same value is going to be used here. Okay, that is very clear now, and after that we just need to provide a signing token or a secret here. So for that I'm just going to use something which is going to be stored inside our environment. Okay, so we'll actually add a token here for the JWT. This will be, you can call it signing token. Okay, I'll just name it JWT underscore secret. So you can actually keep any random string here. Okay, I have just created this random string, so this is going to be our signature. Okay, and we'll verify it when the user sends back this token along with any API request. You will see that shortly. So now we can simply access that here, okay, using this process.environment.jwt secret, and now this function is going to simply accept the user ID. Okay, then it is going to make use of this secret that we just created, and then it will provide us with a JWT token, and that is simply what we are going to send back to the user. So here we need to provide the argument. So I'll be writing user doc, and to access the unique ID for any MongoDB document, we have to access this property underscore ID on it. Okay, this will be more clear when we will create our first user in database, then I'll show it to you. Okay, and just on that note, let me also tell you that you can download this MongoDB compass. Okay, like we can actually see what data we are storing in our database. Okay, and you can also do many operations, okay, which can also be done programmatically. Okay, so this is the GUI for MongoDB. You can install it. Okay, we will be using it in the next video, okay, to check what data we are storing, what properties we are getting inside our database. So now we have created this first controller. Okay, and I'm also going to explain what is the use of this next function, okay, while explaining the middleware concept. So I hope this is it for today. Okay, we'll be continuing this in the next video. Thanks for watching, and if you have any doubt, then you can post that in the comment section, or you can also join the Discord group that we have, okay, created. There are many people in it now, and you can ask any of your doubt here. So thanks for watching. Okay, I'll see you in the next one, and you can also get the updated code. I have already posted its link in the Discord group. Okay, thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video, leave your comment. Okay, and I'll see you in the next one.